Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this special edition of Monday Night Mic'd. It is, in fact, a Tuesday night takeover because we are on the eve of the 2020 entry draft opening up tomorrow. The trade period opens 10 a.m., followed by the first round of the draft on Friday, bleeding right into rounds 2 through 14 on Saturday. It's a full week of QMJHL transactions, trades, players, scouting, everything and more. And we have it all here for you tonight on Facebook Live. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, John Quinn. You can follow me on Twitter at QuinnOfTheNet. Send in your questions to any of our social media channels tonight. You can join the chat here on Facebook Live. Send us a tweet. Hit us up on Instagram. We want to hear your questions, your feedback, everything about the Q draft that's happening all this week. You may have seen there was some news came out today. Some leaks and things are starting to happen. We have our own leaks and tidbits and things to share with you all tonight. If you want some information on our picks for the draft, you can follow the little ticker there down below. You'll see important times and dates and all the picks that we have as it stands right now before the draft opens up Friday evening. Of course, the draft will be streamed live on YouTube by the QMJHL, so you can tune in to that starting 7:30 Atlantic on Friday night. If you just head to youtube.com and search for the QMJHL, you can find that stream there, and it will be bilingual as well. So if you see there, point this direction. Yeah, that's better. The rundown there, we have a full show jam-packed. We're going to speak to three current Sea Dogs. We have Joshua Roy, who was drafted first overall last year at the 2019 draft to your Sea Dogs. William Villeneuve, who went second overall the year before that. Jérémie Poirier, number 8 overall. Some top drafted talent going to talk to us about their draft experience, as well as doing a little bit of catch-up. We'll have them on maybe a couple weeks from now to catch us up on the full season recap and what they've been doing and kind of relive their first and second years in the league. But we just wanted to check up with them and find out about their draft experience and that big day that all of these kids are waiting for now on Friday. After that, we're going to speak with our assistant GM and head scout, Anthony Stella. Going to talk to us a little bit about scouting, his role as assistant GM and head scout, and some things to look for as the draft approaches. And then after that, we'll follow it up with our president and GM, Trevor Georgie, going to talk about what the plan is with that 3rd overall pick. Plans for, we have a second first round pick as well at 15, possible trades and things coming up. So tons of news to go over there. And as well, our 2 mystery guests. If you want to drop your guesses in the chat, we love to hear them. I saw a few floating around earlier today. And so lots of fun there with our mystery guests. But first, we want to take a little trip down memory lane with Joshua Roy. Like I said before, drafted first overall in 2019. So I got some clips here of that actual draft. If you didn't have the pleasure of being there in Quebec to see him march down the aisle, we'll relive that. And then we'll kick off with our interview with Joshua Roy. Stay tuned.
Avec la première sélection, the St. John Sea Dogs are very proud to select Joshua Roy.
Fans, I'm joined now by number 19 of your St. John Sea Dogs, Joshua Roy. Joshua, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
No problem. Our pleasure. Josh, I just want to catch up quick. Just how you been holding up? What have you been keeping busy doing over these last few months? I know you were golfing yesterday. Has it been golf every day for you, or are you? What have you been doing?
I'm playing golf like 3 or 4 times each week, and then I'm training a lot and passing time with my family and my friends. So I'm a little bit busy.
A little bit busy. That's good to hear. Now, I want to go all the way back to 1 year ago today, I believe it was, that you were drafted to the St. John Sea Dogs first overall. But a little bit before that, you had a lot of hype surrounding you in that season. You piled up a ton of goals that year in midget. Can you talk a little bit about the pressure of kind of being ranked number 1 and kind of the hype machine that followed you around that season?
Yeah, I had a little bit of pressure, but I was like just concentrating myself to the game and like not thinking about that I'm the first pick overall. So I did pretty well.
Pretty well indeed. And obviously the Sea Dogs had a chance at first overall pick. It was a very small chance. I think it was 4.9%. Were you following the draft lottery at all to see kind of where you may end up?
Yeah, I was with my agent. I was watching it and I was like, "Whoa, it's pretty nice," because like there was I think one ball in the lottery, so
Yep.
it's pretty nice. Yeah.
And did you know much about the team? Obviously, the draft prior to that, we had kind of piled up a ton of young talent. Was that pretty exciting to know you were going to play with guys like, Josh Lawrence, Brady Burns, our trio of defensemen? Did you know much about the team?
Yeah, I knew a bit of guys like Villeneuve, Poirier, and some guys of Quebec, but the guys from the Maritime, I didn't know them well, but like now I know them well.
You know them well indeed. You
Yeah.
you you played a pile of minutes with Josh Lawrence and seemed to really click with him in the later half of the season. Can you talk a little bit about the second half of the year? And you really seemed to turn it on and kind of find your stride. Was that more just getting comfortable and kind of gelling with the guy and getting used to the league and being a 16-year-old in the queue?
Yeah, I think it's I just get used to the league. Like I start slowly before Christmas, then I came back with more confidence, and like I did very well.
Very well indeed. Now, on that draft day, I believe it was 1 year ago today, actually. Talk about what that day was like for you. I mean, it must be weird waking up and knowing, 99.9% I'm going to go first overall and I'm going to be the first one to walk down that aisle. Can you talk a bit about kind of the nerves and how you were feeling that day?
Yeah, I was really nervous before. I was shaking almost, and like that was unbelievable. Like it was in Quebec, so all my family and my friend were there, and it was perfect.
And for people who don't know, I mean, obviously your name was called first, so you're kind of done the super exciting part of the day, but the day doesn't really end there. You got to go and meet the team and fill out forms, and you get skates done. Can you talk about kind of that process after your name is called, everything that happens after?
Yeah, you gotta go meet the team, and then you gotta go take picture with all the first round pick, and then normally you can leave, but I stay for my friend like when they were drafted later on the draft, so that's pretty nice.
Well, that's very supportive of you. That's good to hear. Now, in terms of this draft this year, do you know anything about these players? Obviously, a year difference, but have you ever played alongside them? Maybe you have the same agent. You played at camps. Can you tell us any inside info on any of the guys that are available in this year's draft?
Well, I don't know a lot of guys, but I did play with Luno from Trois-Rivières. I did play with him in uh, Hockey Canada game, and then he's really good. And I know Pierre-Olivier Roy from Quebec too. I play with him, Bam Tam and Pee Wee, so he's a nice guy.
Now, if we had to, do you have any friends in the draft that we should be keeping an eye out? Someone that that
No,
maybe
I
we should
don't.
take a flyer on in a late round. That's
No, I
you owe
don't.
a favor to. No one.
No, I don't actually.
We'll let it be known if anyone's watching. If you want Joshua's recommendation, it's still out there. Maybe a bucket of balls or a round of golf might be able to sway his recommendation. Well, Josh, it's been great keeping up with you and finding out how you've been doing. And it's cool to get your insight on the draft. Obviously, being first overall, that's a pretty unique perspective. And we can't wait for the next season and what you're going to do in your sophomore campaign.
Perfect. Thanks.
No problem. That was our good friend Joshua Waugh. Great kid, great player. We're very excited to see what he can do in his second season. Now, someone who had a fantastic second season, William Villeneuve. We'll get him on the air in just a few seconds. But a reminder, guys, take a look at the ticker. You can get caught up with our picks coming up this year. And again, the rundown here on the side, everything we have coming up. Still to come, William Villeneuve, Jérémie Poirier, Anthony Stella, our assistant GM and head scout, and president of GM Trevor Georgie, and then our two mystery guests as well. But we're going to keep the interviews rolling. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to welcome to the show number 13 of your St. John Sea Dogs, William Villeneuve. William, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. First question before we get into the draft topics. Just wanted to check in. How you been holding up these last few months? How you been keeping busy?
For sure, it's not ideal situation with hockey and stuff like that. We used to have hockey in your life almost every day during the year, so obviously it's not easy, but just trying to stay busy, trying to have a routine, working a little bit, trying to working out 5-6 times a week. Like you said, just trying to stay busy.
Working out 5-6 times a month, just like me. So getting into the draft obviously is a big topic this week, going to start on Friday and lead into Saturday. I want to talk about your kind of draft year in midget. You were a standout player on a very good team. I believe your team ended up winning the championship that year, correct?
Yeah.
And on that team, who were some of your teammates that year that people might recognize that are now in the queue as well? Is there other guys on that team that kind of have made it to a similar level?
There's Patrick Gay playing with the Sherbrooke Phoenix. Charles Baudouin playing for Shawinigan, and Marshall Lassar, V. Picard, a couple guys in Val-d'Or. So there's a lot of mega guy in Val-d'Or.
For sure. And then on that team, like how conscious are you in your midget year? Obviously, in your Q draft year, like you just experienced, you have NHL scouts in the building, and it's no secret every night. It's hey, the guy from the Maple Leafs is here, or the guy from the Canadians is here, and that's pretty exciting. Is there that same level of knowing, in a midget game that hey, the guy from the Sea Dogs is here. Hey, there's a scout here from the Q. Is it that same excitement level?
I think you're starting realizing a little bit more the years going on. I think in midget and junior, it starts kind of being a business. The draft is kind of a big thing. It's high level hockey in junior. So yeah, obviously it's a special year. I think it's a fun year too. It's a stressful process, but I think I was able to enjoy every moment of it. And like you said, we had a successful season, so I had a lot of fun.
And that must have helped too, playing on a pretty stacked Magog team and then kind of going on and winning the whole thing. I mean, one of the things scouts always say they look for is, good players tend to win a lot. Did you feel like that came up in interviews often, that really helped you in your scouting?
Oh, for sure. I think scouts and teams won some winners, and I think, like you said, we won the whole team Magog, so allows me and a couple players to have a better draft stock and stuff like that. So obviously it's helped.
And then leading up into draft day, you would have had a pretty sizable break up until that draft day in early June after your last game in Magog. But what do you remember about that draft day or the days kind of leading up, the excitement, any last minute interviews? I mean, you must have known that you were going to go fairly high in that draft, but you're still sitting there looking at the board. Okay, St. John's at 2, this team's at 3, this team's at 4. Did you have any instincts of where you were going to end up or where you maybe wanted to go?
I don't. I didn't have an idea where I was going. I had a special feeling for Saint John. Honestly, me and my parents met Anthony and Trevor in the restaurant in Magog, and we had a pretty good feeling. But I think I started realizing the big thing when the day before the draft. When I was meeting a couple teams with maybe 6 or 8 people in the room. It was pretty special. I think all the interviews that I had before, it was maybe 1 or 2 people. But the day before the draft was 6, 8 people, so it was pretty stressful but pretty special at the same time. And obviously the draft is a fun day, but it's a stressful day. I think this day is gonna dictate where you're gonna maybe spend your 3, 4, 5 year for the next of your life. So yeah, it was pretty special.
At least you had the benefit of going second overall, and that way you didn't have to sit there and wait and wait and wait. I can't imagine how stressful that is when it gets into the later rounds, the 12 round, 13, 14 round, whatever it is, and you're sitting there. You brought 30 or 40 family members. It's always kind of a sad sight at the end of the day, but obviously
Yeah.
not being drafted isn't the end of their career. You hear stories all the time of guys kind of turning around after the fact. Did you have a big support system? I remember obviously I was there when you were drafted, and you had tons of family members and stuff there, but was there a big kind of cheering section for William Villeneuve in the crowd that day?
Not really. I think I have a pretty small family, but we're really tight. So obviously they are following me since I'm pretty young in my hockey career. So for sure it was a special day for them, but for my parents, especially, they made so many sacrifices and put so much time, so much money in me since I'm young. And remember my dad. I was asking him why he was going to work every Saturday and was working 6 days a week. But right now I realize that hockey's expensive, so I'm really grateful to be where I'm today.
Shout out dads, just in time for Father's Day. You can get them a nice gift coming up.
Exactly.
Now, back to that draft day. This was kind of a storyline I wasn't super privy to, but I kind of learned after the fact. But we ended up drafting just after you, Jérémie Poirier, and obviously you guys are teammates and have been the last couple of seasons now. But at the time that you were drafted, you guys, your Magog team had just knocked out his team out of the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
And this is a player that you'd played against, Jérémie, pretty much your whole career, or just sort of once you made it to midget?
I think just when I made it to midget, in Sherbrooke, we're not playing against Montreal a lot, and JP played midget at 14 years old, so we didn't play a lot against each other. But I think that the first time I think was in midget, and we had pretty good games against each other. I think that was the best series I ever played in my life. We won in 7 games in Magog with a pack rink. It was amazing, and it's gonna remember it for the rest of my life for sure.
And was there any animosity at all when you and Jérémie? I mean, looking back at old photos and stuff, and I'll pull one up. But was there any animosity? Wounds were still fresh after you guys knocked them out.
No, sometimes we were making jokes about it, obviously, and I have the big part of the stick. I won it. So, but no animosity. I think me and Jake were pretty close, and yeah.
Now, I want to touch on this season just because it was a pretty monumental season for you. You knocked off a couple long-standing franchise records for assists and for points by a defenseman in a single season. JP, of course, got the one for goals in a season by a defenseman. It's pretty big boost of confidence for all the fans out there, coaching staff, everyone that it's your second year in the league and already you're busting records that have been there from guys like Nathan Beaulieu and famous names and Sea Dog's lore. Can you talk about that season, and not so much just the breaking the records, but just your season overall? You seem to really make a huge step from your rookie campaign.
Yeah, for sure. It was important for me to come back after some struggles last year. Obviously, coming to a struggling team, rebuilding team where we didn't win a lot, it was pretty hard on me. I've been a winner in my whole life. I've always been on great teams, so it was pretty hard. Also, I got mono coming back from Christmas, and I wasn't able to get my best level of hockey after that, and I feel that I let a lot of people down. So for me, this year was important to come back strong and prove a lot of people wrong, and prove that St. John made a good pick, and I think I did good. I had the confidence from my teammates, organization, coaches. So that was a big boost of confidence for me, like you said. And I think me and JP work a lot together, and I think we did some great things.
Yeah, well, the combination of you two, and I mean, obviously both offensive players, but you seem to bring something kind of different to the table, the two of you, and the combination of both of you on the ice at any time is a pretty explosive combo. Obviously, we're talking about the QMJHL draft, but you have your own other draft aspirations now. You're in your NHL draft eligibility, first year of that. Obviously, everything's kind of up in the air right now for the NHL draft. Just when you think you had to wait until June, now it's possibly September, October, or even later. But you seem to pour it on at all the right moments and kind of building this momentum. Have you kind of gotten that sense? I don't know if you guys are still talking to scouts and GMs and doing interviews and stuff, but are you getting that feedback that, like, hey, we really saw that progression in the latter half of your season?
I think a lot of people saw it. I think they all see that I was struggling a little bit last year, and they were. I think they saw that I came back strong this year, and had I think a good season. And I think I just want to the team. I just want to build on that. It's a process. It was a process for me, but it's a process also for the team. And the next 2 years are going to be really important for the team, but for me too. I want to get better. I want to be one of the best every game and in the league. So big years coming up.
Big year indeed. Well, thank you so much, Will. We can't wait to hear from your teammates, and I'll check in with JP if there was actually any animosity there on draft day. He's coming up right after this. But thanks so much, and we hope you have a great rest of the off season, and fingers crossed for the NHL draft. And when I speak for all of our fans and staff and everyone else, that we can't wait to see you on the ice for year 3.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Will. That was William Villeneuve, number 13 for your St. John Sea Dogs. Coming up next, we will be speaking to Jérémie Poirier, but I just want to remind everyone, get your questions in the chat or on social media. Use the hashtag Sea Dogs Draft. If we can't get to them tonight during the show, we'll be sure to reply to those on social media or in a release coming up soon. Speaking of release, the QMJHL did put out a release today mentioning that they're targeting October 1st for the season to start. It would still be a 68-game season, just delayed by 2 weeks. Of course, this is a targeted date, nothing set in stone, but it is a very positive thing to hear that they have a target set in mind. Of course, this all relies on provincial regulations and government and everything else, but fingers crossed as of right now that they are targeting October 1st, so that is good to hear. Now, the other side of that defensive duo, it's time. It's my pleasure at the time to welcome to the show number 54 of your St. John Sea Dogs, Jérémie Poirier. Jérémie, welcome to the show.
Hey.
Usually they say, "Hey, thanks for having me," but hey is fine. We'll get to the pleasantries later.
Yeah.
Jérémie, the first thing I'll ask, just because it's what we cover with everyone, how you been keeping up? How you been keeping busy here during the last couple months?
Yeah, I mean, in Quebec, situation is not great, so there's a lot of cases. So we're just staying at home, and I have the time to spend sometimes with my family right now. So I think that part is great. So I'm spending some time with my family, seeing a bit of my close friends, just trying to find some ways to pass the time and do some activities like as much as I can, and for sure keeping fit, training a lot. I built a little gym in my garage because all the gyms are closed, so I just keep doing my workouts, my programs at home, and just trying to get better for next season for sure.
Now, one of the things you're going to have to experience is today is your birthday. So you've had a COVID birthday, they call it. I as well had a birthday in isolation. They're not very fun, are
No, not great, not great.
they? Well, happy birthday nonetheless. You're 18 now, I believe.
Yeah, turning 18 today.
You can do all the fun stuff now, like vote. So it's a big age.
Yeah, yeah.
Jerry, I want to get into your draft year. We just spoke with William Villeneuve. You guys drafted obviously at the same time, but you also crossed paths in midget when he was playing for Magog. You guys met in the playoffs, and then you end up getting drafted on the same day. And I asked him this question, and I'm curious if you're going to have a different answer. But was there any animosity at all when the two of you, obviously, you were kind of the stars of your teams in midget, and his team got the better of yours. But was there any animosity on draft day when you guys met and found out you're going to be on the same team?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, for sure in the playoffs, we're two big players on our respective team. So for sure there's a lot of competitivity and stuff like this during the season. But I think at the draft day, we're just both proud to be selected in the first round of the Q draft and have the chance to play in the Q. And it's fun for us to be like in the same team. We didn't know each other well, but right now we've become really close friends for now. So I think on that day we just put it all back to like all behind us, and we both know we're gonna be teammates for a long time. So might as well be friends right now.
Exactly. And the two of you are very friendly guys, easy to get along with. So you make it easy on each other.
Yeah.
In growing up, and not so much in your midgets kind of draft year, but at what point in your own career did you kind of notice that, like, hey, there's a scout here? Did you have your first interview? At what age did that sort of start for you as a player?
I'd say like usually around 14. Okay, I played midget underage in Quebec at 14, so like all the guys that were in their draft here were playing on my team, and like all the scouts were there and like talking and stuff for the Q draft and everything. So yeah, I just started to hear about it a little bit. Like sometimes the scout just talking to me because I was playing in the league, asking me a question like about what I was doing in that league and stuff like this. So yeah, I think around the age of 14, like I was in the big world a little bit more, like I can say.
And I remember talking with Trevor Georgie and Anthony Stella after you were drafted, and they talked about that series against Villeneuve, and they were like, "Hey, Villeneuve's team won, and he played great, but like the things that Poirier was doing were like out of this world. We'd never seen them before. The way you were playing with the puck, and it almost looked like you were not bored, but just to challenge yourself. You were doing that extra little step just to kind of, and that's something that I kind of saw during the season too. You would add in that little extra 1-2 move just to like keep sharp and make sure you could still do it. Is that something that you consciously did, or is that just part of being a good player?
A bit unconsciously, but it's always been part of me. I always like love to do like a lot of moves and stuff like this. I've always been a skills player, so just doing those moves are kind of part of my game. So in midgets, I just trying to lead the way, and like on my team, we were playing against a pretty good team. Will's team was a really good team, so playing against a team like that, you need to play your best and elevate your game. So that's what I did, and like you said, I just bring that to the junior, and this year just keep playing that way for sure. Yeah.
And that's kind of a prime time to do that in playoffs and midget, and everyone always talks about kind of that's the last look that scouts have before the draft comes. Did you remember your stock kind of climbing throughout that season, or did you feel that you were always kind of ranked high in that midget season?
Yeah, I've always been ranked high all year. For sure, playing underage helped me a lot. At the start of the year, I had a little step just because I played in the league the year before. But actually in the playoffs that year, I started pretty slow. I had pretty, not great playoffs at the beginning. And I kind of stepped up because I needed to in that series against my team and Will's team. So I think, yeah, for sure, I was kind of stressing the playoff because I know it was a big part and I wasn't not playing that great. But at the end of the day, I think one good last impression can help you a lot. So I'd say never give up and just keep playing your best, and you never know what happened next. Yeah.
That's a good mantra to have. Now, I want to talk about draft day specifically. It was in Shawinigan that you were drafted to St. John. What do you remember about kind of the days leading up to draft day, or about that day specifically?
Yeah, I was just with my family, just in Shawinigan the day before. I met with a couple teams just the day before the draft, just to last minute call and stuff like this. And the draft day was actually on my birthday, I think, June 2nd or something like that, or the day after my birthday. So yeah, it was a pretty special day for me for sure. I was going there. I knew I was ranked high. I knew I was getting drafted probably in the first round and stuff like this. So it was a little bit of stress, but at the end of the day, I was just saying I just can't wait to have a jersey and be part of a team. And after that was the Sea Dogs, and I had a good meeting with the Sea Dogs, and I was really happy. And now I'm still really happy to be a Sea Dogs and bright future for us ahead. So it's fun to be part of this team for sure.
Now, one thing I remember about the draft day, obviously drafting you and Will, and kind of that dynamic duo, and the future was there, and defenseman, and that whole draft overall was so memorable. But as right after you got drafted, you kind of went away with the team. You were filling out forms, etc. Your parents were there helping you through some things, and then I got stuck kind of babysitting your little brother. And at that time, if you can imagine, obviously knew what he looks like, but anyone else, it's a much shorter you at that time, big red crazy hair, and he was just running a terror in our booth, grabbing all the merchandise and trying to steal flags and things. And then someone said oh yeah, he plays hockey too. He's going to be eligible for the draft soon. So just before this conversation, you said your brother's going to be eligible next year. You think for the Q draft?
Yeah, I think not next year, the year after.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty good player. So yeah, just fun for him to maybe have an older brother and have the chance to watch me play a little bit, and he's going to maybe know a little bit more about the leagues and stuff, the games that I did, because I'm there for him, and I think it's good player, so it's pretty fun for him, yeah.
Well, that's always cool when you see brothers kind of end up playing, and you can't do it growing up because usually a league only has a 2-year gap for players, and then the Q, you have that sometimes 5-year span that they can play against each other, like the Joseph brothers had it when they were in the Q together. It's very cool, but obviously this year, a big year, you're in a different draft year. In this year, and you had kind of extra opportunities to show your skills. You got to play in the Canada-Russia series, the top prospects game. How important is it? Obviously, the pressure with those games must be immense, but I feel like you really proved yourself, especially in that top prospects game. You had that goal. How did you feel about your performance and those kind of extra chances that they give you to kind of show that you're belong in that top echelon?
Yeah, I think I always been performing well under pressure. And I feel like I love pressure. I love being big crowds and all this stuff, being in front of people. So for sure, those games are a big opportunity for me, to show the scouts and show the people that what I can do against the best player in the league and the best player in the country of my own age and stuff like this. So for sure, I guess I took my chance. I played a good game. I'm pretty happy with the games I played at the Canada-Russia series and the top prospects game. For sure, I'm really happy, and I think it just can help me for the future, those opportunities, and giving me the chance to prove myself and play against the best player of my own age. Yeah.
Now, and I asked Will a very similar question, but you as well, it seemed to kind of really progress in that same sort of, second half of the year, really turning it on. You end up breaking the record for goals by a defenseman, franchise goal for a defenseman in a season. Did you get any feedback from scouts and interviews and things about your season and how you're progressing? What were you kind of hearing down the stretch, or even now? I don't know if you're still doing interviews and stuff. The draft date is kind of up in the air, but what's been the feedback?
Yeah, I think I know everybody knows that my offensive side of my game is my biggest assets, and that's what makes my bread and butter a little bit. So yeah, for sure they're pretty happy with my offensive season. Like it's like a lot of goals. I scored 20 goals this year. There's a lot of goals. Scouts are pretty happy about that. But for sure, I'm like I know that too. But my defensive game, I need to improve if I want to play have a career at the next level. So the feedback are just keep doing what you're doing good offensively, and maybe focus more dialed in the defensive game. And I've been talking with that with my coaches in St. John and stuff like this. And I know it's a part of the game I need to improve, and I'm working on that. And like the scouts, the feedback said, like Trevor and Jeff, what are they telling me? I'm just keep gonna improve and keep gonna work on that and try to get better for the Sea Dogs. So team can get better too. Yeah.
Well, we look forward to next season, Jeremy. We expect big things from you and the rest of the team. We have some pretty big years on the horizon here in the Port City, and as well, good luck to you at the NHL draft whenever that does occur, whether it's this summer or later in the season. I can't imagine how stressful that is for you. Like, just you're waiting for this day your entire life, and now it just keeps getting pushed back, and now no one even has a date. So my heart goes out to you on that one, man. I feel for you. It's exciting for me, and I can't imagine what it's like for you and your family. But we really look forward to next season, and hopefully we can get another Poirier maybe in the 2022 draft. We'll take a look and see if he remembers me. But thanks so much, Jeremy, for joining us, and good luck.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem.
Yeah.
That was Jérémie Poirier. That wraps up the final of our player interviews, guys. But if you tuned in to get some info, some insider info on the draft and the trade period and some of our scouting that we've done throughout the year, the best is still to come. Up next, we are going to speak with our assistant GM and head scout, Anthony Stella. Reminder, guys, get your questions in the chat or on social media. And if you missed any part of the show, you can rewind, but as well, we'll be putting the VOD up on YouTube just following the show, and that'll be there. We'll be clipping out some of these interviews, and you can watch them individually as well. And a reminder, everything gets underway tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. is the trade period opening. There's a 3-hour window there. It'll be a flurry of trades. It's going to be a lot of action, I imagine. A lot of board GMs been sitting around the last few months just waiting for this moment and their time to shine. And then, of course, Friday is round 1 of the draft, and we hold 2 picks in that first round as it stands right now, 3rd overall and 15th overall. I believe we have 8 other picks throughout the remaining rounds. You can check all that info below. But I think we are ready for our next interview. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to announce joining us for the next few minutes, assistant GM and head scout, Anthony Stella. Anthony, welcome to the show.
Hi, John. Big fan of the show. Glad to finally be a part of it.
If you had to pick your favorite episode, which one would it be?
I really enjoyed Brady Burns. He was pretty good with talking about the players and stuff, like doing that quiz you had for him.
Mm-hmm. It'll be. The questions will get harder from here instead of just stroking my ego, but I appreciate you being a fan of the show. Anthony, I want to get into your role as a scout, and that's kind of a word that gets thrown around, and we get applications all the time of I want to be a scout, or it'd be cool to be a scout, but I don't think people really comprehend the work that goes into being a scout and what a scout actually does. It's a little bit more than just watching a game and pointing out, yeah, that guy's the best player on the ice. But can you talk a little bit about in your eyes, what being a scout is and kind of what they do in the run of a year?
Yeah, I'd say, especially for area guys, it's like, kind of mastering your area, like to know all the players, to be pretty much an encyclopedia. That's kind of how I came up, that, I could be asked about any bantam, midget, junior kid, and I'd know about them. I'd be able to break down their game and everything like that. So I think I think that's like a major part. Like the name of the game is information. So if you have information and, for anyone who's trying to get into it, like have information that teams want, because then you're valuable. If you're just telling them what they already know, that won't really help anybody. So I know for me with my staff, we kind of have like a nice mix. It's also a lot of people that kind of understand like what we're looking for and what we want. And, I'd say the hard work, like if you're not a hard worker, don't even bother. You need to be in for long drives, sit in rinks. Sometimes like it's not very fun when you're sitting in a cold rink in like middle of February, like watching a kid you've seen 5 times, but like you're like addicted to the grind pretty much. And you're just like, you have to be competitive too, right? Because that's what keeps you going, and that passion and kind of stuff like that. But those I'd say are probably like qualities of a good scout. Yeah.
Yeah, you talk about the grind. I mean, not every game you're going to watch is going to be Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final, and you're going to have to watch some pretty bad games, I imagine. But there's that one, diamond in the rough that you got to keep an eye out for, and that's kind of what makes a scout a good scout, I would imagine. Can you talk a little bit about kind of how our scouting staff works together a little bit? Everyone's sort of the master of their own region, but how does that come together? Where someone from the Maritimes might say, nope, it's this kid, he's got to be our first overall pick. Where you've seen another kid and you're kind of biased towards someone you've seen in the Quebec region, maybe. But how does that kind of all gel and come together?
Yeah, so we might have one of the smaller staffs, the Q. That's just personally how I prefer to run it. I'd say what's very important is just having a goal. So it would be hard for like, the guy in Nova Scotia or New Brunswick, whoever, like he'll fight for his guys. But if they're not Sea Dogs, like you're kind of fighting against the team in a sense, right? Not to go into too much detail, but so we all have like the goal, we all have what we want, we have our specific type of players and what we're looking for. So kind of your job is to find that. But of course, everyone has their own opinions, right? One scout might really like guys that do this. Another scout might really like guys like that do that, and I'd say too, we're very like analytical thinkers, not just like numbers, but just our thought process in general. So I don't think we get too hyped up on like random things that other people might get hyped up on that really don't play a factor into like, is the player good at hockey or not? So I think like a lot of those things keep everyone on the same track. But communication is a big part too. Like we talk, you could ask any of our scouts, like we're on the phone all the time. We're in our group chat, constantly texting. So to kind of like go rogue and like do your own thing and stuff, like it doesn't really happen too often. So I'd say we're all like part of like the same thought process, but I don't mean like team think as well. I mean more like we're all like had the same goal in mind, I'd say.
For sure. And you mentioned there, a player may be good, but they may not be a quote unquote sea dog. I think people will be kind of surprised to hear that it's not just about their on ice effort and things that come up in the interview. It is about school and personal relationships and some of the unique questions and things that get asked. But what are some other things outside of just, you're in the rink and you see them, if they kind of pass that first litmus test of, yes, he has the on ice qualifications. Now let's dig a little bit deeper. What are some other things that you might look for when you're kind of investigating a player?
I'd say, especially for where our team is now, competitiveness. There's some players that we've met with that, they talk about at their household how competitive it is. And, if they're losing in Monopoly, they'll flip the board over and, like certain guys like that where, some players, it's like, yeah, like I'm just good at hockey and I just kind of play. I don't work hard in the gym. And, so that's like such a major part of the job too. So I personally like, this year was a bit different. We had Zoom and stuff, but I like to sit down with the player. If I could like meet the parents or whatever and like chat with them and just kind of see how they are. But I'd say in St. John, we focus a lot on personality too. And, I'd say I'm a pretty fiery guy. I'm a pretty passionate guy. Like I'm usually pretty like calm, but when it gets to it, like I could be. So I look for that as well. Like I can't play the game. So I want guys, who could be able to go and win for us and the team and the fans and everything like that, and also I'd say in St. John too, we have strong values. So especially like if Trevor and I are interviewing a player, like if the values don't match up, like it would be pretty hard for myself to then turn to Trevor and Scott and say, I'm putting my name behind this guy when he'll be, he won't like represent the team well. So yeah, that's for draft picks, I'd say.
Very cool. Now, I do want to get into you, and I'm not looking for you to reveal all the magician's secrets, but in the run of a year, where are you typically going tournaments? You're traveling. I know you travel quite a bit to kind of check every nook and cranny for that key player. But talk a little bit about the travel schedule. Obviously, this year being a little bit different, but in a standard year.
Yeah, so in a standard year, like I'd say last year I did hotels, Airbnbs. I did maybe a bit over 200 nights, like away from home, just constantly on the road, just, doing US stuff all over Canada, Quebec, Maritimes, as well as, a couple tournaments in Europe, which, you don't really have to twist my arm too much to go watch some hockey and in like,
How many soccer games are you sneaking in during those trips?
A couple. I mean, I got lucky. There was Champions League at the same time as like another tournament, so like, yeah, why not go? But yeah, I just constantly like anytime, and I mean that's the good thing with like what Trevor and Scott allow me to do is that if it's a Thursday and I just happen to see a tournament's Friday, I could just pack up my bag and go away for 3-4 days, and I have full discretion for that. If it's like, yep, if you think it's worth it, go do it. So, I don't think our draft would be as successful in everything we do if it wasn't for like Trevor and Scott to be like, do your job, and like that's pretty much it. So to be allowed to do that kind of like shows like the success I think the team has had so far.
Now, would you say there's kind of a crown jewel tournament in the scouting world, or is it playoffs or something? I know like the Monctonian for Maritime kids is a big one on the calendar, but is there one that you're looking for, maybe for Maritime kids, for Quebec kids, and then international or American players that you can kind of pinpoint?
I'd say for me, the whole season's a novel. Like that's kind of how I see it. Like even when I read reports on players, like we could have reports on the kid from Bantam all for like 2 years. So I'd say in that sense, there's not one main one, but obviously like the challenge in Quebec is like the one big tournament where all the teams are there. There's also the Combine, which we didn't have this year, which you could really see like Team Nova Scotia against Team PEI against, so you could kind of see all the guys together. That's usually a pretty big tournament. So I'd probably say like those two. We don't have as many like Ontario. I mean, they have a lot more leagues. So there's like tournaments like every week or something, but we don't have that luxury. So the specific ones, like I think there might be 5-6 main ones. So they're all fairly equally important, I'd say.
Now, seeing all these games and then focusing more on this year's draft, we often get asked, what kind of draft is it this year? Is it all about, bigger sized players? It's all about speed this year. Goalies are huge in this draft. It's all about defensemen this year. Like what seems to be the theme going into this draft when you look kind of through the first round into the second and third, the kind of top end guys?
I mean, based off like the top 3 rounds, I think we could probably see a major percentage of those 3 rounds being defensemen. That's just an assumption. So I'd say that compared to maybe like last year where it was probably a bit weaker, and the 02 draft where maybe there was like a lot more high-end defensemen. So I'd probably say there's like a lot of defensemen this year. So if you're one of the other 17 other teams that don't really have a good decor, well, this would pretty much be your draft to go get some defensemen.
So we're drafting all defensemen. You heard it here first, right from Anthony Stella.
Oh no, we're the 18th team.
Do we? I'm trying to think. Do we have any good defensemen? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean we have a couple.
couple.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of the plan on draft day, how set in stone is that plan when you talk about, it's defenseman heavy this year, but let's say our goal was to get a goalie or get a big forward or something, and all of a sudden we find them in the third round, or they drop or move, or you see a team has done something, a trade happens. How much fluidity is there on draft day to kind of make that gut reaction and say, okay, this feels right, we need to do this because that's the player we need, even though that may not have been the exact plan heading into the day?
Yeah, so I think every draft, like it's all about read and reaction, and you got to feel the draft. But I mean, last year's a perfect example where we got a lot of guys we never thought we'd get. You know, like we had Charles Savoie, like I think we might have had him like 14th overall on our list, and we got him at 34. Cam McDonald, we got in the third round. Like Robert Orr, we got in the fifth. So I think like you work all year long on your list and on players, and it's like we want this guy, this guy, this guy. So if you're prepared, it kind of just comes easy. But you always have to expect the unexpected, always. We do some stuff behind closed doors to like practice that and to really like, you know, try different things and put ourselves in different scenarios, which I think have really helped us. But, you know, like the 0-2 draft, like Charlie DeRush falling was like, you ask anyone at that draft table, it was chaos to get that draft pick from Charlottetown, which we ended up taking DeRush. But it was just like, I wish we had a camera crew because it was pandemonium on the draft floor.
Oh, and even me, I get involved with that. I get pulled down. You need to print these documents right now, and I'm trying to find a printer on the draft floor. And yeah, it is chaos because it is time limited and stuff. So do you anticipate it being a little bit easier this year in terms of the run around? There's not quite as much spectacle that you're kind of involved in, and you're there on the draft floor and you're worrying about, okay, that team's going to see me go and talk to that team. It's a little more behind closed doors this year, since it's all online.
I'd say yes and no. I'd say yes in the sense where we have a very short list of guys we want. So even if some guys fall, like I think we're prepared for it. But no, in the sense where now every GM is just sitting in a room and they could just like pick up their cell phone or be texting. So I'm actually curious to see if there's more activity this year, just because if there's like, you know, if the GM's just sitting there while the person's picking on the computer, he might, you know, I know Trevor might need 2 cell phones to like call one guy.
2 minimum,
text
yeah.
another. Exactly, right? So I'm very curious to see if there might actually be a lot more kind of like smaller trades and stuff, but we'll see. I know we'll be prepared. That's all we can do, and I don't know if there'll be any crazy things, just because we're living in a crazy world right now. So
yeah.
It's just like following like, oh, this Q draft was crazy. It's like, yeah, so has the past 3 months been, you know?
Right,
so,
right.
So basically we're expecting it to go off the board very quick. So it might go completely like normal and
right.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see.
Well, that's exciting. That's exciting. Now, we did have a question. We had sort of put out a line to people to send in their questions, and this one's pretty specific, but I was hoping you can answer it. How important is handedness to the organization when assembling defensemen? So, like, what are the chances that like Charlie or will end up playing on the left side regularly on 5v5? How much stock is put into lining up, you know, handedness? I always hear about, you know, oh, he's a left-handed D, you know, he's worth his weight in gold, but how much does that play into kind of your draft decisions and building a team?
Yeah, I'd say like we'll never make a major decision off of that, but when we get into like major comparables, we will. So like in the 0-2 draft with William Villeneuve, we kind of thought to ourselves, at 18, 19 years old, he'll be the best right-handed defenseman in the Q. And we looked that year, you know, Bathurst had won with Noah Dobson as the best right-handed D in the Q, and what that meant for them. So we really looked at Villeneuve in that sense, and we said, okay, like there's a lot of lefties that we could get every year, but he will really be for maybe 2 years the top right-handed guy. So in that sense, we put value into that. I'd say if they're an elite level defenseman, you don't really, you know, I think it's like you don't make a major decision based off of it, like I said, but we do talk about it. And I'd say most coaches would probably want 3 and 3. I'd say it's probably the easiest thing. I do think, though, there has been a lack of quality right-handed defensemen. So a lot of lefties play right in midget. So if you go back, like, you'd see a lot of left-handed guys that play on the right side just because there are none. And
Right.
even if you look in the queue, like, some teams have a lot of lefties, where for us, we said, you know what, like, what if we built a team of a lot of right-handed guys? We noticed that was like a bit of a niche market in the league. So even if you look at our US picks, a lot of the US defensemen we took are right-handed. So we just kind of have a plethora of right-handed defensemen. Maybe not all will come to the queue, but we just kind of, we noticed that might be a weakness. And we just kind of said, you know what, like, let's make this a strength of ours. And now, I mean, now we have a lot of righties, and now we kind of need to, like, look for some lefties, I guess you could say. But I'd say we're not really too, we don't see that as a weakness. Let me say that.
For sure. And I mean, it is just one part of what you look at when you're looking at a player. Obviously, the side that they play is just a small piece of the larger picture. But thank you so much for your time, Anthony. Is there anything else, any bold predictions you wanted to throw out there, or something we can clip and then show after the draft and say, wow, he was right. He called that, Charlottetown was going to take that guy in the 12th round or something. Any bold predictions you want to throw out there?
I mean, we'll probably be hated on no matter what we do. So that might not be a bold prediction, but we'll just be hated on. We could trade all of our picks, and we're up to something. So I'll just say that. No, I'll say my major prediction is we'll once the season gets going, we'll be very competitive. That's my bold prediction.
Very bold indeed. We'll see if that's correct once the season gets underway. We'll go back and say, wow, he was right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Anthony, and good luck this week. I know it's a busy one for you. This is your Super Bowl, so congratulations on the season that's passed, and good luck with the draft.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
That was assistant GM and head scout Anthony Stella. Lots of cool insight there around scouting. The insight's going to continue, guys. Up next, we do have our president and GM, Trevor Georgie. But following that as well, we have our two mystery guests who will be joining us. Some guesses rolling in. Keep them coming in the chat. And if you have any additional questions as well, we want to hear them and we want to answer them. Reminder, guys, trade period opens tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. until 1. There's going to be a ton of news all the way around the league. Every team just been thirsty these last few months to make a trade and get the season underway. So that's going to happen tomorrow at 10 a.m. Atlantic. Check it out on our website, all over social media. It'll be hard to miss. And then on Friday, of course, is round 1 of the draft. And I think we have some insights coming up on what's going to happen during that first round of the draft. Fans, I'm joined now by team president and general manager Trevor Georgie. Trevor, welcome back to the show. You're the first ever two-time guest, I believe. So a good honor for you.
Big honor. Thanks a lot, John.
No problem. So obviously a huge week for you, Q draft week. As I was saying to Anthony earlier, this is your Super Bowl. It's kind of outside of the playoffs and obviously the start of the season. This is a big one in your GM role. What's kind of the word on the street? How you've been preparing? How do you feel about this week?
Yeah, it's a different week for sure compared to past years. Getting a chance to usually go and to be in the room and in the hotel lobbies and the restaurants and kind of in the hallways with all the other GMs and the congregation of hockey folks and the other folks from around the league is usually pretty helpful. I kind of like in negotiation. I like the face-to-face combat. I like the draft floor. I think anytime you do business with other teams, it's personal. I think it's face-to-face, being able to do that adds an element of trust and an element of just an element of deal making that I think lends itself to be favorable for us in terms of the way we like to work. So that's a bit different. But yesterday night I fell asleep with my phone in my hand and woke up this morning, picked it right back up, and continued on. So our phones are going off the hook. You end up talking about probably 80% of things that never end up happening. You could probably do a whole show on what, deals that never came together. But that's the week that it is, and we're preparing for every scenario possible.
And Anthony had mentioned just prior to this that you may have 2 cell phones on the go come draft day. How many cell phones are we looking at? Dana White levels of 3 phones? How many how many visits to the Bell store have you made?
2 for sure. 2 for sure, and then maybe a third burner one that we'll use. But yeah, no, 2 phones for sure, and I should make sure to keep it charged. I think that's the most important thing. I think I'm charging it multiple times a day.
Well, I feel bad for all the old school, GMs and coaches and scouts out there who aren't too technically inclined and rely on the paper and pen and face-to-faces and stuff. And now it's, okay, now the draft has gone digital, you got to learn how to use Zoom and every other form of technology. So my heart goes out to them. Getting into plans for the draft, obviously we have 2 picks in the first round, 3rd and 15th. I'm not going to ask you to tip your hand and tell me the exact player that we're going to take in those 2 positions, but how do we feel about those picks in general? Teams have been reaching out, interested in those picks. What are your kind of plans? What are you willing to share?
I'll share as much as I can. I would say that a week ago or 2 weeks ago, we were probably for sure picking it at 3rd overall. I would say today, just as conversations kind of grow and new conversations start to develop, and interest around that pick has gotten, as you get closer, it gets higher and higher. So there's a high value that we put on that pick. Given that it's 3rd overall, there's only 1 team picking ahead of us, even though they picked twice. So you'll really have your choice of who you take there. So for us, there's a high value, and we would like to pick at that spot. But if a team makes it interesting enough to either for us to move back or trade the pick outright for a player, we're looking at everything. As of today, earlier this morning, I sent an email out to all the GMs around the league, just letting them know that we're actually going to explore everything with all our picks. And you have so many. What ends up happening is you have so many conversations with people. You have a phone call, you have a text conversation, you have emails. Finally today, I just said, let's put it all on the table and understand what our options are. And even just in sending that email out, there've been a few other conversations that have started that were non-existent yesterday night. So that's all to say that I think it's all on the table. And if I was a betting man today, I would keep my money and I would go home. I wouldn't place a bet because I think all bets are off today of what we do with that pick.
Now, outside of the draft, obviously the trade period opens up tomorrow, and there's kind of been some leaks and different things going out today surrounding some larger trades have been happening around the league. But one of the trades that did come out today, and you can speak to, is Robert Orr, someone that the fans may not be super familiar with, as he never played a game with St. John. But can you talk a little bit about that trade?
Yeah, Robert Orr, played for the Lac St. Louis Lions. We took him last year at the start of the 5th round. He was a player that was contemplating, coming to the league. He wasn't too sure whether he was going to, play in the Q or pursue NCAA options. He came to our development camp last year, and he was good. He was good in our dev camp last year. I think the challenge for Robert with our roster is just where does he fit? I think we have a pretty deep forward group, and it's going to keep getting deeper. So for him, it was an opportunity for him to go to a team that's rebuilding, much like us a couple of seasons ago, get lots of ice time. That is something that he really wanted, was to more of a chance to play. And we were able to get a couple draft picks that we think are going to be important for us this year's draft.
Now, of course, he's headed to Halifax, and a question that came in on the boards last night, also revolving around Halifax, so I won't get into the piles and piles of context around these 2 teams and the season that we had. But just a question about the Safin trade, and it's kind of gone back and forth, and this has been a very fluid trade, it seems, over the years. But about the first round compensation that we get with that pick and its change, just if you can clarify kind of how that trade works.
Yeah, so initially the Safin trade actually ended up was Halifax's first this year, which turned out to be Luno. So that was the original trade, And that was, obviously changed over the years based on various factors. But the pick that we have right now is for 2021. And if the pick ends up being a top 10 pick in the 2021 draft, then that pick moves to 2022. So it's as simple as that. So if Halifax's pick next year is top 10, they get it back, and we get their pick in 2022. If it's 11 or onwards, then the Sea Dogs pick with that pick.
So regardless, we still just want to beat Halifax. It's the not even looking at the standings. It's always just beat Halifax. Perfect. Now, the draft and the trade period, obviously two big things. But earlier this off season, we announced the signing of Peter Reynolds. Are there any more surprises or signings or things we should be on the lookout for?
You know us, we love surprises. Never one to pass up a good surprise. So I wouldn't rule it out. All
right. Your smirk speaks for itself. And in terms of this draft and our sort of goals, and obviously there's a lot of pressure put on that third overall pick and what we're going to do, and even the 15th in the first round. But going into the later rounds and stuff, what are sort of the holes you see in the lineup or roles you want to fill? What are sort of our goals going into the draft this year?
Yeah, great question. We're looking, it's a pretty boring answer. We're looking for depth at every position. By trading or to Halifax, we're able to pick up another second, a late second, and the very first pick of the fourth round. So it gives us another 2 picks in that mix that we think allows us to put our hands on, kind of take or and turn them into 2 players that we think will help us in the future. And it's a win-win for everybody. But for us for this year, in terms of depth, I think we're pretty deep up front. And we're deep on the blue line. I think for us, we'll be looking to just kind of fill our system of prospects. If you look at our roster, most of our guys from that 2018 draft and 2019 draft are actually going to be on our roster, and so we're actually playing in the queue if it's not on our roster. So that means that we don't have necessarily some of the depth, playing in midget and playing in junior. So I think it's finding players that will provide us that depth and allow us for when we want to make our Memorial Cup run and have a few championship seasons to not be void of talent and can kind of continue to be a competitive organization.
Now, ahead of the draft period, which opens tomorrow at 10 a.m., we did get the A-OK that we are allowed to release a little bit of information, a couple tidbits for our fans out there and everyone that's tuned in. So the floor is yours if you'd like to talk about a couple new faces that will be coming to St. John in the upcoming season.
Sure. So the first acquisition that we're going to reveal is a player that we've had interest in for a number of seasons. He's a player that was actually drafted here in St. John when the QMJHL draft was hosted here. He was taken in the top 10. He's a right shot, shutdown defenseman. We thought that was something that we needed, a defenseman that was first over the boards on the penalty kill, was strong one-on-one, that hit. Last season, this defenseman led all defensemen of the 18, 17, or 16 age group in hits. And speaking to Nicholas Gay, that got to play with him for half a season, he said he was the toughest guy to beat one-on-one. His words were actually impossible to beat one-on-one. So you like hearing that from a player as talented as Nick. So the first acquisition is Christopher Innes.
Well, that's very exciting, and that's kind of long been rumored. So the secret's now finally out, right from the horse's mouth, if you say. And our second acquisition.
So the second acquisition is a player that we've had our eye on for a few seasons. We looked at this player closely when we made the Joe Valeno trade to Drummondville. It just didn't work out at that time. It's a player that we identified brings 2 things, or a few things. He has size, which is something I think that we're lacking. He has skill. He's also a player that I think will be hungry to win, given that they came close a few seasons ago from the team he's coming from and didn't get the chance to do it. He's a player that, again, speaking to former players and guys around the league, I understand that his leadership and qualities and his work off the ice in terms of the gym are all top shelf. Having spoken to him, he's very excited to be here, and he's a player that's also on the rise. We think that his best years are ahead of him, and he'll be a player that we project to be like Chris Ennis, be a 20-year-old for us for that Mem Cup. So from the Drummondville Voltigeur, Nicolas Giroir.
Wow, fantastic. And that's good practice for your draft voice when you make the picks on Saturday. Well, that's very exciting. Two new players, two new faces in the organization. I guess if you get to reveal some secrets, I'll reveal some secrets as well. That our two mystery guests tonight will be Chris and Nicholas. They'll be on the show just after we finish up here with Trevor. So we are looking forward to that. Trevor, anything else you wanted to comment on about draft week? This is your moment in the sun. So anything else around the trade period, free agent signings? Bold predictions, anything like that? Anthony made the prediction that teams were going to hate us after the draft. Regardless, we could throw all of our picks away, and we'll probably end up being hated by the end of Saturday. But any predictions or anything else you wanted to touch on?
I'm not making a prediction as bold as that. No, I just think it's an exciting time to be a Sea Dogs fan. I think that if you look not so far back, it's hard when you're in rebuild mode. It's super hard and super painful. It's painful for all of us working for the team. It's painful for our fans. It's painful for the players. But if you look at our projection for roster for next season and where we're heading, 24 months ago, before the 2018 draft, we didn't have Roy, Burns, Lawrence, Stairs, Villeneuve, Poirier, Desroches, Drover, Reynolds, Savoie, Patnaud. You could go on and on and on of all the players. I'm missing a lot of other good ones in there. Ennis, Gillard. So a house isn't built overnight. A house takes time, and I think that finally, I think for our fans and for us in the organization, you're able to start to look back and see the shape of it come together. And I think that's a lot of fun. And I just encourage all of our fans and all of us who are proud St. Johners to just enjoy it and enjoy this next ride.
And if you didn't need enough excitement during draft week, I must share my congratulations as well. You announced that you're now engaged to be married as well. The bookies out there who had the line on which you do first, get engaged or win a Memorial Cup, lost a lot of money this week because the heavy money was on the Memorial Cup. But congratulations on that. And it's a good way to start your draft week.
Great way. Thanks, John.
No problem. So, guys, we're going to head now to just a few clips of our newest Sea Dogs, Christopher Ennis and Nicolas Giroir. And right after that, we'll have our two mystery guests, Chris and Nick, here to talk about being the newest St. John Sea Dogs. Right after this.
On met du côté gauche vers Giroir. Belle fin devant Jonca. Ça mène rapidement chez le Phoenix. Devant le filet. Tir contre! Cette rondelle a dévié sur une jambière. Et Nicolas Giroir qui crée l'égalité, c'est 4-4.
À Cormier, Cormier n'a pas de ligne de tir, pivote, revient sur ses pas, glisse la rondelle à Ennis qui lance et compte! Son premier en carrière dans la Ligue hockey junior majeure du Québec, Christopher Ennis.
Son gardien, il y a Semble qui va remettre du côté droit vers Concom. Attention, seul devant le filet, c'est Giroir. Tir contre! Nicolas Giroir qui, malgré une chute, va tromper la vigilance.
Point d'appui, lancé d'Ennis, il y a de la circulation devant! Océanique, c'est le 1-2.
Est-ce qu'on se dirige vers un festival offensif? On a mis déjà 4 buts en un peu plus de 7 minutes. On voit Ennis qui récupère la rondelle de la pointe et du tir.
Oh, quelle déviation habile dans l'enclave.
Oui.
On voit la rondelle changer de direction.
Et Alexis la première, Robin.
C'est un défenseur qui est au sommet des pointeurs recrues, me semble, avec Béliveau puis Lheureux.
Ouais.
Et le but!
Ouais, et Giroir qui marque pendant la séquence. Et là, j'ai l'impression que Dion pourrait récolter une autre passe sur ce jeu-là. Je crois que le jeu débute avec lui. On va voir à la reprise.
Fans, it's my pleasure to welcome to the show and welcome to the organization. As you just heard Trevor mention, a brand new Sea Dog. Welcome to the team, Nicholas Girard.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm really happy to join this team and excited to come play in St. John this fall.
We are excited to have you. Now, I asked you just before we started this, but did you know for a little while that you were being traded and coming to St. John?
Well, at the end of the year, I was hearing rumors, and well, a month ago, I had a call from Philippe Boucher in Drummondville, and then Trevor called me to announce me the news.
And that's got to be kind of not nerve-wracking, but hard not to tell too many people. I mean, not a whole lot going on in the last month or two. That must be hard to keep that a secret, eh?
Yeah, it was hard.
So, for our fans in St. John, I mean, we play Drummondville twice a year, so they may not be totally familiar with what kind of player you are. But how would you describe yourself as a player to our fans?
Well, I'm a skilled power forward. I work hard. I battle, and I can play both ways. I think I can bring a lot of good positive things to the younger players and smaller players with my big size, and I can score some goals and make some plays also.
Score some goals indeed. You had a bit of a jump this past season. You went from 7 in your rookie season to 16 this year, and you played with some pretty talented guys in Drummondville as well. What would you credit your kind of jump in production in your second year?
Well, my first year I didn't play that much because of we had a big team, and it was a learning season for me. And this past season, well, I gained a lot of confidence, and my year went from better and better. Well, like I said, I learned how to play a different type of game, and it paid off for me this year. So hopefully I'll bring that same game in St. John.
No, that's something we definitely look forward to seeing, and that'll endear you to fans when you play hard. They like that here in St. John.
Perfect.
Now, you won't be a complete stranger to everyone in the locker room. Talking with Jérémie Poirier, he mentioned in our pre-interview that you guys are friends. Is there you've known him for a while?
Yeah, well, I known him for 4 years. I played with him Major AAA in Chateauguay, and so I'm really happy to join the team and have a good friend like Jérémie to welcome in the team. So it's gonna be can't wait to meet the rest of the guys also.
Well, Nick, thanks so much for joining us tonight, and the secret's finally out. You can go and share it with the world. I laughed when we announced that we were going to have 2 mystery guests, and we put out the tweet that one of the people that liked the tweet, I don't know if anyone noticed, was you, and so we had a good laugh that you were being cheeky with that. So if anyone did catch on that Nick was coming to the team just based on that tweet, then kudos to them. But Nick, thanks so much for joining us tonight, and congratulations, and welcome to the team.
Well, thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you to Nick for joining us, guys. It's been a jam-packed show, and we still have one guest to go. It's our other mystery guest. Just a reminder, guys, all the dates and times. Tomorrow is the trade period opening up. It's a 3-hour window starting at 10 a.m. Friday, streamed live on YouTube on behalf of the QMJHL at 7:30 Atlantic. That's Friday night. It'll just be the first round. We have 2 picks as it stands right now. And then on Saturday, the continuation rounds 2 through 14. That won't be live streamed, the 2 through 14 on Saturday, but there'll be tons of updates. You can follow along on Twitter, the website. We'll be posting them as they happen. And I think we're ready for our final interview. Fans, it's my pleasure at this time to welcome to the team and to this show, Christopher Ennis. Christopher, welcome.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
We are glad to have you here. It's been a secret. I wouldn't call it well kept, but the rumor mill's been flying that you've become a part of the team since the Nick Gay trade that happened. So it's a moment we've all been waiting for. Me especially to finally have you on the show and be able to tell people that you're now a Sea Dog. I'm guessing that's been kind of hard to keep a secret for you as well. Nick kind of said the same thing. Not a whole lot going on over the last 2 months, and to have this in your back pocket must be a bit of a relief to finally let people know.
Just let it out, yeah.
Exactly. So, Chris, for people who don't know, I mean, you've been with Rimouski the past 3 seasons, so we've seen you 6 times during that span. But what kind of player are you? How would you describe yourself?
So I think my game is mostly a defensive game. Just making sure that I'm solid in my zone firstly, and then after that, just making sure I make the right plays and being physical, and I think that's how my game is primarily.
And that's something that Trevor had mentioned when we just talked to him, was about your physicality, and you led all defensemen under the age of 18 in hits this past season. Has that always been kind of a big part of your game? Was that the physical?
Yeah, for sure. It's always the physical part of my game is always a part I always wanted to implement. Game after game. Always have like small objectives. Like trying to get at least three good hits in, and I think it really shows because it's tougher to play against an opponent that's always physical against you. So that's why I always try to bring that in my game.
And that'll endear you to our fans. I said the same thing to Nick when he talked about kind of being a bigger body and being a physical player, and that's something that St. John fans will take to pretty quick. You mentioned being a tough guy to play against, and talking with Nick Gay, Trevor had mentioned that he said that you were the hardest guy one-on-one to play against in practice, and so that's a pretty big recommendation coming from somebody who was captain here in St. John. The connection with St. John. The connection with St. John is one that kind of started from your Q career when you were drafted into the league. Was when we were hosting the draft. We didn't have a pick until the 3rd round, so it wasn't really a Sea Dogs draft per se. But any memories of that fateful day in St. John?
Yeah, for sure. It was the start of my Q career. So for sure, I'm gonna have those memories with me for the rest of my life. And I just remember being an amazing day, and with the friends and family around, and the experience obviously was magnificent as well. So just one of those days that I'll always remember for sure.
And the connection with St. John doesn't end there, because you played in Rimouski, and it seems like Rimouski and St. John over the past couple seasons have been buddy when it comes to the trade period. So we've sent Cedric Pare, Nick Gay, Sam Dub McFalls, Shea Stewart. You've had some time playing with those guys. Any words about your time playing with those guys, or maybe any memories or anything they shared about their time in St. John?
Yeah, well, honestly, all the guys that came from St. John, I had good connections with them, and I always had fun with them in the room, and they were obviously very big players for us on the ice as well. And honestly, all of them had good things to say about St. John, so that's why I'm very excited to be able to be part of that going in.
And you're a big piece of our D core. You talk about being a shutdown guy, and I mean, obviously bolstered by players like Villeneuve and Poirier, who we interviewed earlier. They're tend to be more offensive, so the fact that you're bringing that hard one-on-one defense is pretty exciting. And another thing about your time in Rimouski, you did wear the A on your sweater during the season. Is leadership a big part of your game?
Yeah, for sure. Like I was telling Trevor the other day, for me, it's just about showing the example all the time. I try to, every practice, every game, just being sharp, and I think that's kind of my way to lead, just always being the example, and that's what I try to bring every day.
Fantastic. Well, I speak on behalf of all of our fans that we're super excited to see you in Sea Dogs blue and white coming up whenever the season does start, hopefully sooner rather than later. But Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure, and welcome to the organization, and we can't wait to see what happens.
Thank you very much, John.
No problem. Guys, that was our 2 newest Sea Dogs. You heard from Chris Varenas and Nick Girard. We can't wait to see them on the ice coming up soon. Thanks to all of our guests this evening: Josh Roy, William Villeneuve, Jérémie Poirier, Anthony Stella, Trevor Georgie. Thanks to all of our fans that tuned in, anyone that submitted questions. That has been our trade period draft special. The trade period does open tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. And then, of course, the first round of the draft takes place Friday. You can catch all that on the QMJHL YouTube page, bleeding right into Saturday with rounds 2 through 14. Guys, that has done it. It's been an absolute pleasure. Please send any feedback you have to our social media accounts. If you enjoyed the show, let us know. And we'll have the VOD up on YouTube with the entire show and all these interviews as well just after we go off air. We'll see you next Monday night with our guest. It's going to be Matthew Joseph, so do not miss that. Same time, 7:30 p.m. Atlantic, right here on Facebook Live.